The big one. So go to rahuketu.net to attend the Rahu and Pisces Ketu in Virgo free web class. We're going to have this shift of Rahu going through Pisces and Ketu through Virgo. It'll be from November 29th, 2023 until the end of May of 2025. And I'm going to talk about what it means for your sign, the house axis from your chart, for the world based on past transits. So are you ready for that? What's going to happen? And again, as you can see here, I analyzed the nodes, what they are, Rahu in Pisces, Ketu in Virgo. You see we have big eclipses coming up with this nodal axis, October 14th, 2023, and then also April 8th next year, and even further into 2025. So again, this is a great opportunity for you to really learn what this transit means. So go ahead and register rahuketu.net. So as you see, we start the month with this pileup of planets in Libra, including Ketu, the South Node. This is the true node position. I know there are people who are saying that Rahu and Ketu have changed signs even at the at the end of October, but that's not the true node. That's not where the node truly is. That's the mean node. They are different, and the true node does mean true node, where the node truly is. And in the sky, using the most advanced calculations and ones we have now, the node is not yet in Virgo and Pisces using the Lahiri Ayanamsha. Okay, so we start with the nodes in that Aries Libra axis, and as you see, the sun is close by. The sun was just eclipsed, and so was the moon. And then we also have this Mars combustion. Mars is very combust now. As you see, the combustion happens when Mars is 17 degrees from the sun. Here, Mars is now 5 degrees, so it's very combust. It's in the sign of Libra, where it's a sign of relationships, agreements. They're quite combustible. They've been combustible for quite a while now. We can even see Libra is an important sign in diplomacy, including things like international relations and relations between countries, and literally diplomacy, because that's worked out between two people and groups of people. So we see the combustible situations there. Mercury is also close by. He's also combust and also joined Mars. So a lot of combustion in this area of life known as Libra, which is where we compromise and accommodate others' views and try to find consensus. Those things are in short supply these days. Not only do we just, again, have this eclipse there, but we have Mars, the planet of fighting for our principles, Mercury, of figuring out the details about what's right and what's wrong and how things really work. You know, what's the story? You know, there's so many stories now with a lot of these situations in the world, also in your life. Look at this in your life as well. You got a lot of stories going on justifying why you might be, you know, angry at someone or withholding attention or upset that they did something, and you're sticking to it because you've tried hard enough, and you're going to stay with that story, and it's kind of more polarizing and more polarized, let's say, than usual. Again, we can also see this, you know, particularly we see the terrible situation in the Middle East now. No matter which side of it you're on, quote, if you're on a side, many people are, you know, can easily see both sides, and it's like you can't really get half a sentence out of your mouth about one side before the other side says, yeah, but there's this, and it's kind of a cycle. It's like a loop. So this is a very sticky situation. Obviously terrible to see all the devastation in the Middle East, but there's other situations. You know, there's similar types of wars and genocides and brutality around the world. We just hear about it now a lot more because America is involved and our government is involved, but there's no shortage of atrocities that have been happening around the world for decades that nobody says anything about. So that's not to minimize this by any means. It's just to say it erupts into our consciousness now. But these things are happening all over the world. They have been for a long time, and hopefully one day we can grow up as a species or we're going to destroy each other. But we can see the real sort of collective frustration, anxiety, lack of diplomacy, sort of polarizing energy around all these planets in Libra that have just been eclipsed. And again, Ketu is still there, the true node, based on the Lahiri Ayanamsha. But we also have other things. Venus is right here at the end of Leo. Look at how far away the Sun and Venus is. This is the residual of that Venus retrograde that took place way back in the summer. Remember way back then when Venus entered Leo and then went retrograde into Cancer? It's still in Leo. This is a transit that started back in July. It's going to be in Cancer or Leo. Or I'm sorry, yeah, either in Leo or Cancer for like 3 or 4 months. This is why I made a big deal about it back then. So all these other planets have been moving. The Sun has been through Cancer and Leo and Virgo, and it's halfway through Libra. Same way with Mercury. Mercury did go retrograde in Leo, but Venus has only been in those 2 signs. It went into Leo, then it went back into Cancer where it hung out for a couple months, then it goes forward again, and it's still in Leo. It's about to break that hold. So this is also important, again, because our Venus energy has been really sort of toggling between these 2 signs of Cancer and Leo. It shows that since the summer, we've been very much in a kind of, almost like a sort of holding pattern a little bit where we're sort of working through our deep sensitivities as it correlates to our relationships and our agreements. The deep sensitivity is the Cancer part, wanting to be nurtured and wanting connection. But then Leo is the very fired up individuality. Again, right now and for the last few weeks, we've been, Venus has been in Leo, which is more in that fiery individuality part. And again, so I would definitely say that a lot of agreements and accommodation that you might make for others where you're, sort of reasonable, even in your accommodations. And I literally mean things like forgiveness and like, okay, it's no big deal, and being willing to hear the other person has been in short supply. So it could be very much the case that the last few weeks or so, again, especially since Mars got really combust and the Sun went in, it's been a couple weeks now. Since the Sun has been in Libra where it's in its debilitated sign, very close to Mars now, getting closer. Mercury's also been there, and Venus was in Leo the whole time. It's very easy for people to get kind of feeling like they're sort of put, back into a corner, and then too much, frankly, pride and ego and self-righteousness and aggrandizement to, accept an apology or make an apology or forgive, even if they're normally more forgiving. I've definitely seen some of this in my life. But honestly, for me, I don't have so much of that, at least as far as the forgiveness part. If something happens, I just say, hey, what, sorry about that. I'm always reading what someone is communicating. If I make a mistake, I'll say sorry. I've just noticed how stubborn, there's a sort of implacable stubbornness right now in certain situations that have been very surprising to me. First, that there was some sort of dramatic misunderstanding happened, and then even when it did happen, be like, hey, sorry about that, it was no big deal, I hope you weren't offended, and it's like no response or an angry response or something, like, man. So try not to hold too much against people, but at the same time, we all have our own standards also. And, for me, the frustration comes when I've tried to accommodate and then they either ignore or they stay more angry or they get locked into their corner. Then I also become like, all right, then what the heck with you? Yeah, I don't need it either. So these are big things. And again, we're looking at it, I'm talking about it on a personal level, which you may very well be experiencing, but also obviously look at the world and what we've been seeing. So big shift here. And by the way, yes, the Sun and Venus are exchanging. People will say, oh, there's that exchange. Doesn't that cancel it, modify it, make it better? It could make it better, but again, what it's making better, these are 2 enemies that are exchanging. Again, and what an exchange does, when you don't really understand it, because again, if you haven't done a lot of work around these things, case studies and years of training, the Parivartana yogas and exchanges, they hold together, like, for example, success in your endeavors or something. If you bring some success in what Venus and the Sun want to accomplish together, particularly as they are house rulers in a particular nativity. So again, if you're talking about someone's birth chart and Sun-Venus exchange, like the debilitated Sun and Venus in Leo, then it's going to be a certain type of, it's called Sambandha, where it's going to glue those things together, and the goals that you have around these two planets based on what they share will often be held together. But in this case, again, they're functional enemies. They don't share much. They don't have much in common. So this Sambandha is not that strong. And in many ways, it holds together this kind of stuck feeling that I'm talking about. Again, you can look around you and see. People will often say, and I'll see it in the comments, well, but there's also that exchange, so that's not too bad, right? That's good. And again, no context. Instead of interpreting it, it's actually even showing what happens. It can bring this kind of sort of revolving door. This is also what the exchange does. The debilitated Sun is ruled by a very frustrated and irritable and haughty, self-righteous Venus in Leo. And those two things are kind of toggling back. Now, if there's something that you want to do that serves both of those things, it gets supported. Like, for example, keep fighting with each other, stay in battle. You want to keep battling, it's going to hold it together. Because the aggrieved Venus and the debilitated Sun with all this combustion is getting kind of fed into each other. So if your goal is to make war and have an excuse to fight and battle over these things and to be backed into your corner full of self-righteousness, well, it's going to support that. So that's what it supports. Again, when you get planets that are friendly, exchanging, and especially if they're gentle or whatever, it supports that. For example, like Mercury, Venus often get into an exchange, which, by the way, once Venus moves, then the exchange is going to be between Mercury and Venus. That's going to be some relief. This exchange between Mercury and the Sun, between the Sun and Venus is not so good. When Venus goes into Virgo, it's going to be between Mercury and Venus, and that's better, first of all, because Mercury is cooperative, but it has a lot in common with Venus. Mercury and Venus exchanging from Virgo and Libra has a lot in common. There's a lot that they agree on and a lot that they want to accomplish together, which means listen to what the other person says so you can accommodate and share the joy and experience the happiness and beauty, with the person. That's why Mercury and Venus go well together, because Mercury's about the communication, Venus is about saying, okay, I understand. I also want the connection with you. I also value you and think you're wonderful. Okay? So those two really help each other. This isn't. Venus is like, I'm the queen. Get on your knees and, apologize again, beg again, or something. And the Sun in Leo, especially joined Mars and Mercury, isn't really having it either. It's like, oh, okay, so you're going to expect me to do that? Yeah, have a good time waiting for that. And also fired up around the lack of willingness to compromise, for example. So this is what the exchange does. So again, it's a lot to talk about here, even just at the beginning of the month, right? So we're going to cycle through. The other thing is Saturn is almost about to go direct. He's stationary direct, which means he's kind of stopped. He's stopped in the sky, and then he's going to start moving forward, right? So he's been retrograde for several months, like four and a half months or so. So that'll be a big shift with him moving forward again. So we could see some movement around some of these really awful issues. And I'm going to make a prediction that, by the first week in November, I think we're going to see some movement, some positive diplomacy in some of these world events. And so I'll run this chart forward and you'll see why. But we're just coming out of these eclipses as well. And these warmonger psychopaths that run the world, this is a perfect setup for it. All this combustion in Libra of compromise, of agreements, of diplomacy. And they're like, no, absolutely no diplomacy, no ceasefire, war. And just fired up on both sides. And so this is the kind of thing you would see. This is what it would look like. So let's move forward some other days. Again, this is November 1st, but then we go forward. You see much doesn't change. Planets move. By November 3rd, we have Venus early degrees of Virgo. And yes, you geniuses out there will go, but it's debilitated, isn't that bad? I'm not trying to make fun of you, but yes, I know, it's an debilitated sign. So when Venus is in Virgo, it shows where we're more sort of finicky and recognizing all the problems, let's say, with the things that can make us happy. I want to be happy, but the house is messy, and I want to be nice to you, and I want us to get along really well, but, if you would just pick up your clothes, if you would just do this, if you were just a little nicer, if you were da. So Venus in Virgo, we can be too focused on what's wrong rather than finding happiness and beauty in all things. That's why Venus is exalted in Pisces, where there's this happiness for no reason. Everything makes us, everything is a source of beauty and gratitude. All those things are big Venus words. In Virgo, sometimes that's hard to come by. But it's not that hard. Of all the debilitated placements, this one is the least problematic. One of the reasons is because usually in a nativity, when Venus is debilitated, many times it's either joined the ruler, so usually either Mercury is there with Venus, or it's exchanging with Venus like you have in this case. However, because of this retrograde that happened and Mercury and Venus are so far apart, they're not going to be exchanging very long. You can see Mercury's at 27. Mercury's about to go into Scorpio. He's much further away from Venus. There's a lot of elongation here. So Venus pops in there on the second. So actually, yeah, on the second, and this is like 9:30 in the morning. So yeah, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. So by the 6th, so only the 2nd to the 6th are Mercury and Venus going to be exchanging. So maybe you'll find there, November 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that. Maybe you'll see some diplomacy happen at that time. But even so, just Venus breaking the Sambandha with the Sun is also going to be helpful. So I think from here we're going to get closer to peace with that situation, at least what we could call peace. Just today we saw some atrocious bombing of a refugee camp. This is just, all of it is just horrible. Both what happened to the Israelis from Hamas, and then of course the Israeli retaliation, all of it is awful. So, but I don't want to get too into that. Obviously, we all know about this because it's just redundant at this point. I did make a prediction that I think it's going to start to get a little easier in that context. We also have these planets moving closer to the exact aspect with Jupiter, particularly the Sun. Jupiter's aspecting the Sun as well, and also Mars. So the Jupiter influence on this Sun, I think, can also bring some relief. And also Saturn moving direct. You see Saturn turns direct. It's on the 3rd, I believe, 4th. So by the 4th, Saturn actually stops the stationary and starts to just inch forward a little bit. So at least he's no longer going back, and he'll kind of station there for a bit. So this early part of November, look for a few things to indicate a break, like in the worldly situations a little bit, and also in your life. If some things have felt very stuck, particularly the personal things I've been talking about, and the personal heaviness, where, again, maybe there's been some just unpleasant, weird feelings and feeling unappreciated and not really knowing what to do and really being kind of angry about some things and even realizing or thinking, why am I so irrationally weird about this and whatever. Some of that will start to loosen, I think. So be patient with others and also look at yourself and introspect a little bit about some things that maybe you've just been really also frustrated and angry about. First part of the month, you could see a lot of things shift here. Things stay pretty much in that regard, though. After Mercury goes into Scorpio, then these planets stay this way for a week or two, or no, for about a week, or no, actually even longer. They'll be in this position. The Sun will stay in Libra. That'll be the next shift. I think the Sun will move before Scorpio does, but you see, but we're going to have, this Venus-Moon conjunction, and then we're going to have this new moon. This new moon that's happening on the 12th. This is Diwali. So this is a very holy time right now. And symbolically, energetically, this is the time when Lord Rama, after having defeated Ravana in the epic called the Ramayana, Lord Rama and Sita, his wife, are coming back to their home to assume the throne. And this is their journey now, is coming back. And they return home on Diwali. It's the next new moon that happens, and it's the Festival of Light. It's also considered a New Year celebration in certain parts of India. But it's a time when both the sun and the moon are at their lowest, at their weakest. The sun is in its debilitated sign here in Libra, and the moon is also right near its debilitated placement. As you see, on the 12th, it's joined the sun in Swati. On the 11th, it's already in Scorpio. Move these hours up a little bit. Already in Scorpio, and where it's also debilitated. So this is the time of the year, and that new moon, when the moon is at its darkest, that's when the moon is at its weakest. And so the moon is both dark and almost debilitated, and the sun is also in its debilitated sign. So literally both the sun and the moon, which are the inner king and queen, are weak at that time. So you're like, well, why do we celebrate it when they're at their weakest? And the answer is, yeah, that's why. Because when they're that weak, we have to bring that much more intention. And again, it's called Diwali, the Festival of Light. And we light little, lamps, ghee lamps and other lamps to illuminate that God consciousness within, right? Because we're disconnected from it, because that light and power and energy of the sun, of the Atman, is at its lowest at that time. It's not as bright. And then also the moon is also in a very alarmed state because it's very dark, and it's right, and it's close to its most, alarmed sign, which is Scorpio, where there's a lot of emotional turmoil. So again, November 12th and 13th, 14th, again, it's a very holy time, but it's especially important to be reverent and to do your practices at that time. Again, because both the sun and moon are debilitated, and as we've already been talking about, Mars is also really combust, so this frustration is continuing. As you see, Mars is going to be combust the whole month. You see Sun and Mars now 1 degree, less than 1 degree away, well, a little more than 1 degree away here. So while we're having Diwali, Mars is going to be even almost as combust as he can be. So this gives a lot of potential for, again, spiritual practice, particularly yoga, purification practices. The sun energizes planets when they are combust. Astronomically, what you see when planets are combust is they're behind the sun. We're here on Earth, then you have the sun, then you have the planet. So at this time, astronomically, if you were to look at the astronomy, Mars is as far away from the Earth as it could possibly be at this time. So his rays are coming through the sun. So that nature of Mars to be embodied, like naturally embodied, is hard. So instead of it being embodied, it's kind of frustrated out here. It's very far away from us, where even our capacity to be able to embody and hold anger and frustration is very hard. But the power is if we can sit with its pure energy, and this is what the sun is doing. It's purifying it. This is what the sun always does. It purifies energy by sometimes creating explosive situations that actually will sometimes embarrass us or make us look foolish or sort of make something blow up. And then after it blows up, then we realize the mistake. And that's how it gets purified. Think of your life. You blow up, you make some terrible mistake, and that's how you learn. We learn from these painful mistakes oftentimes. So the painful mistake of the combust planet is often that. So knowing this, you can avoid it. You can avoid the blow up. You can be present. You can have presence. You're not just an automaton. And when we examine these planets, this is what we see. So don't let yourself blow up. Don't let yourself send that angry email or frustrated call or thing. And also don't just, hide out in your resentful little cubby hole and, expect that everybody's going to, or expect that people are going to, try 15 times to, like, get you to act normal or reasonable or with forgiveness or something. Try to evolve, frankly, for a better way to put it. We many times, people hear this astrology stuff. Oh yeah, that's so interesting. It doesn't change anything. We don't do anything different. And it's hard to do something different. It's hard to not just act the way we want to act and justify everything we do and reverse bias engineer everything. So these are intense times right now, as you can see. So this part of the month, again, from November 13th, we see the planets are about to change here after this new moon, which I'll do another video on Diwali and the new moon. That's on the 13th, and 14, 15, 16. You see now Mars, Mars goes a little earlier, but the Sun is right behind it. It's, Mars is 0025 and Sun is 2959. That's less than 1 degree. You see, the next day, the Sun is like 1 degree and Mars is 107. 107. So they're almost exact. By the way, there's going to be some auspicious hemming going on. You see Mercury on this side and Venus on that side of these planets in Libra also. After Mercury breaks the Sambandha here, so you remember I said Mercury-Venus exchange on the 5th, and then by the 6th, Mercury moves into Scorpio and breaks the Sambandha. It breaks the Sambandha, but it is giving auspicious hemming, which is called Shubha Kartara Yoga. These two benefic planets are surrounding this difficult energy. So when you get this hemming, Venus is a gentle planet, Mercury is a gentle planet, and it's surrounding this area of life. It also is going to support the beneficial outcome that I talked about earlier, which would be like diplomacy and things like that. So those things are going to be supported by the Shubha Kartara Yoga, the auspicious hemming, even though Mercury and Venus aren't exchanging anymore. So then by then by the 17th, now you have this shift over into Scorpio. Now we're going to start getting a lot of Scorpio energy for the rest of the month. So understand, up until like the 17th, 16th, 17th, it's a lot of Libra energy. It's difficult Libra energy, though. Again, this is why I always make sure people understand. You can't be black and white, good or bad about these things. Oh, Libra, it's going to be peaceful, diplomatic, blah, blah. Well, it's that or the exact opposite of that, where there's no diplomacy, where diplomacy and compromise and the agreements, that winds up being the issue that you're dealing with. Sometimes Libra can be the least accommodating, because I've accommodated enough. Now, no accommodation. And I'm coming at you like a lunatic with bombs flying because you've been firing bombs at me, now I'm firing bombs at you. That's how we balance. Think of this whole thing even of balance. You bomb us and take hostages, well, we'll show you bombing. Right? So you have to understand that kind of thing about these signs. It's not good and bad, it's not polarizing. Or it's not polarized, it's just a theme. And then you look and see how those themes, like that theme of Libra, is being supported or detracted from. Well, the ruler isn't in a good place. It's in a fired up place. The sign itself has all this fired up, difficult energy. So it means it's the diplomacy you don't have. It's like the absence of the diplomacy. And particularly because Mars is really opposite of Libra, because Mars rules Aries, blah, 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 so etc. So again, this shift away from Libra into more Scorpio happens in the middle of the month. And you see Mars, Sun, Mercury now pretty much in Scorpio for the rest of the month. 425. Mercury goes into Sagittarius on the 27th. So from like the 17th until like the 27th, those 10 days, a lot of Scorpio energy. And again, this could be difficult, to say the least, for these situations that I'm talking about, where let's hope there's some diplomacy, let's hope there's some consensus, agreement. because the planet, when all these planets go into Scorpio, again, protecting our vulnerabilities, again, we might see more kind of reprisals, going on, and very difficult, again, reprisals, backlash, terrorist type of things, maybe even in other places, as both the Free Palestine movement and the, and the movement against, speaking out against Israel, those who are always feeling like, anti-Semitism is on the rise. Like both sides of it could see some crazy things happen once all these planets shift into Scorpio as well. But you see Saturn is now moving forward, and whatnot. But the next big shift is going to come. Well, first of all, Mercury goes into Sagittarius, 2944, 26th. The first day really is like in the 27th, 28th, 29th, so for the rest of the month. Mercury in Sagittarius can bring skill and intelligence to our beliefs, and could certainly pave the way for some of the diplomacy that we might be looking for. And also, most importantly as well, is Venus goes into Libra on the 29th. So again, Venus moving into Libra, the sign it rules, can restore some well-needed empathy for the others and wanting to maintain the connection that the connections that have been broken. There's a very intense crossover here. You see on the 28th, Ketu 0 degrees. Again, this is the true node, not the mean node. This is where the node truly is, relative to Lahiri and Umpsha. Rahu Ketu at 0. So they actually ingress into the Pisces Virgo axis on the 28th, around middle of the day. And you'll see, when we hit the 29th, look, Venus is 0, Ketu's 29.52. Again, that's like exact, right? So they're going to cross in the sky right at this juncture between Virgo and Libra on the 29th. It's a pretty intense transitional energy. Again, this could be this day, the 29th and the 30th, 28th, 29th, 30. We could, again, really see some movement around some type of diplomatic, progress. Let's hope, right? Again, planet's still in Scorpio. There's still the combustion. That plays out for the whole month. And this Mercury in Sagittarius, we're still kind of fired up about our beliefs. Mercury in Sagittarius, we can be really, again, just kind of, using our confirmation bias to, keep convincing ourselves that we're right, the other side is wrong. Sometimes people will think, oh, it's a very deep thinker and whatnot. It's very much opinion. It's more opinionated than anything else when Mercury is in fire signs. Sagittarius also, not just Aries and Leo, but also Sag, because now we're jacked up by these beliefs as well. And I already believe it, and how embedded I am to what I already believe, and now that I already believe this, here's my explanation and my argument as to why I'm right. And again, Mercury can definitely be that way. Can also bring some questioning of our story. So let's hope it's more in that line, especially for hardliners. And maybe just also being more intelligent about what these beliefs are really getting you. Because that's also the nature of Mercury. Like, what is this philosophy getting me? Is it really getting me anywhere? Is it really getting me where I want to go? So that begins, that was on the 27th, I believe. Yeah, on the 27th, Mercury goes in. And then on the 29th, Venus goes into Libra and Ketu goes into Virgo and Rahu in Pisces. This is where the big shift happens. Again, you want to get my free web class on this shift. I've been talking about it for months, and we're seeing the effects of this big shift already, this prelude. But now we're going to see some major shifting happen by the end of November, where we could have a whole new reality by the end of November and into early December as Rahu continues through as Rahu is going to be in Pisces for the next year and a half, and Ketu in Virgo. You see, that's November 30th right there. So we'll leave it at that. Again, I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope you have a great November 2023. Go to yourtruenaturevideos.com to get the Live Your True Nature 4-part video series. The first is called Your True Self, Your Cosmic Self, where we talk about the Atman, the Jiva Atman that comes down into the 9 planets of Lord Vishnu, how we incarnate. Then we look at our egoistic struggles in video 3, where we try to return back to the path home, the joyful and wise path home, in video 4. So again, yourtruenaturevideos.com. It's time to know yourself, not just believe in yourself. For a limited time, I'm offering 10 hours of masterclasses, Yoga and Vedic Astrology, Quantum Vedic Astrology, and Spiritual Astrology Masterclass. These are 3 great courses that will really help you a lot. Now, in case you don't know who I am, I taught the Astroved certification course, Dattatreya Shiva Baba, in 2010. Ravi Shankar published my book in 2018. I've been around for decades. I've been teaching these great classes, and if you go to VedicAstrologyEssentials.com, you can get this 90% off discount of these 3 great classes, more than 10 hours, guaranteed value. You can check this out. These 3 classes will give you all the necessary tools to begin to learn Vedic astrology. Please find me on YouTube at Sam Jeppy, Vedic Astrology Teacher. On there since 2007, thousands of hours of classes. Also on Facebook at Astrology Teacher, tons of articles updated regularly, and I'm on Instagram at Vedic Astrology 108, ongoing updates and interaction.